WNBA Finals were meant to be a celebration of everything women's basketball has become. High drama, elite talent, packed arenas, and a fitting finale to a landmark season. Instead, they've served as a quiet, uneasy reminder of one truth. Without Caitlin Clark, the league struggles to find its heartbeat. When Aya Wilson and DeWanna Bonner took the floor in front of half-empty stands, with tickets starting at just $6, the message was impossible to ignore. This wasn't the grand showcase of a thriving sport. It was a stark reflection that, without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA still hasn't found its pulse. For Aya Wilson and DeWanna Bonner, it was nothing short of humiliating. These were the self-proclaimed queens of the WNBA, the faces meant to carry the banner for women's sports. But instead of roaring crowds and electric energy, they were met with scattered applause and yawning sections of empty seats. The disappointment was written all over their faces. During warm-ups, cameras caught Wilson shaking her head, muttering under her breath, "This is the finals." It wasn't arrogance, it was disbelief. Bonner tried to keep her composure, but her post-game words said everything. "You work your whole life for this," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "You want to feel the energy, the love, the fans, but look around." She wasn't wrong. Even with championship banners hanging above, the arena felt hollow. What should have been the pinnacle of the season, on paper, this finals matchup had everything: reigning MVPs, season stars, and built-in playoff storylines. But without Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, the spark was gone. The energy that fueled the league all summer vanished almost overnight. When fans opened Ticketmaster and saw seats going for as little as $6, it only confirmed what many had already feared. The excitement was gone, and the interest just wasn't. Aya Wilson, usually the embodiment of confidence, looked rattled. For years, she's been the face of the WNBA establishment, celebrated by the media, marketed as the league's standard-bearer. But the reality was impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark's absence from the playoffs had exposed just how much of the league's surge in popularity revolved around her. For Wilson, the finals felt less like a reward and more like a reckoning. Within minutes, social media lit up with mockery. $6? That's not a finals ticket, that's a parking fee, one fan wrote. Another posted a video of the near-empty arena captioned, "You pushed away the star who filled every seat. Now enjoy the echo." The clip went viral within hours, racking up more views than the league's own official finals highlight reel. Inside the locker rooms, frustration had curdled into anger. Wilson and Bonner weren't just disappointed by the empty seats, they felt betrayed. The league had promised growth, visibility, and packed arenas. But it had become painfully clear, those crowds hadn't come for them. They came for Caitlin Clark, the storyline, the sensation, the phenomenon. Without her, the energy evaporated. "It's like nobody's watching," Wilson admitted after Game 1, her voice heavy with disbelief. She wasn't wrong. Ratings had plunged nearly 50% compared to the semifinals that featured Clark and the Fever. Highlights that once dominated social media barely made a ripple. ESPN, which had spent weeks breaking down every Clark pass and performance, had already moved on to off-season NFL chatter. The spotlight had shifted, and the finals were left standing in the dark.
Guys, if the Fever and Caitlin Clark was playing in a finals game, let's say against the Mercury, with all that drama around there, would there be a single ticket less than $300? Now, I mean, honestly, a single ticket less than $300. I don't think so. I think you'd have courtside seats go for $5,000. If Caitlin Clark was playing, if she was in these finals along with the Fever.
DeWanna Bonner's post-game comments cut even deeper. "It's disrespectful," she snapped. "We play hard. We deserve packed arenas." The quote spread instantly across social media. Some fans sympathized, but many didn't. "You mocked the player who brought the fans," one viral reply read. "Now you're wondering where everyone went." The internet didn't hold back, and neither did the fans. They remembered how, all season long, veterans like Aya Wilson and Cheryl Swoops had thrown shade at Caitlin Clark, questioning her hype, dismissing her impact, and even implying her popularity was tied to her race. Now, as Wilson and Bonner stared out at rows of empty seats, those same fans saw poetic justice. The players who had spent months downplaying Clark's influence were finally seeing, in real time, what the WNBA looked like without. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert issued a carefully worded statement praising the competitive spirit of the finals, but no amount of PR polish could hide the truth. You can't call it growth when championship tickets cost less than a movie ticket. The optics were brutal. For a league that had spent months celebrating sellouts and record-breaking ratings, the finals turnout felt like a slap of reality. Even other players noticed. One anonymous WNBA veteran reportedly quipped on social media, "It's not the finals, it's open practice with nicer uniforms." The line went viral, quickly turning into a meme. Fans piled on, flooding timelines with side-by-side photos. A packed Gainbridge Fieldhouse during a regular season fever game next to a half-empty finals arena. The caption read, "You miss her yet?" Behind the scenes, tension was boiling. Multiple insiders said both Wilson and Bonner had vented their frustration directly to league executives, furious over what they called a botched marketing effort. They blamed Engelbert's office for failing to sustain the momentum Caitlin Clark had created. But others inside the league whispered a harsher truth: this wasn't about marketing. It was about ego. All season long, veterans like Wilson and Bonner had resisted the idea that Clark had changed the sport. They dismissed her rise as media hype, a temporary spotlight that would fade once the novelty wore off. They urged fans to respect the pioneers and pay dues. But now, standing in half-filled arenas during the biggest games of the year, they were confronted with the undeniable reality. It wasn't hype. It was a movement, and they weren't leading it. The frustration finally spilled over during the post-game press conference. When asked about the sparse attendance, Wilson tried to stay composed. "We can only control what we do on the court," she said carefully, before adding, "but we deserve more." Bonner, however, couldn't hold back. "You fight all year to get here, and it feels like nobody cares," she snapped. The room went silent. It was raw honesty, and it laid bare just how deep the resentment ran. By morning, their comments were everywhere. Sports pundits and fans dissected them relentlessly, with many pointing out the irony. Two of the most outspoken critics of Caitlin Clark's spotlight were now demanding the same attention. Stephen A. Smith summed it up bluntly: "You can't chase away the person who built the house and then complain nobody's visiting." The backlash was swift and merciless. Memes flooded X, formerly Twitter. Empty stands captioned, $6 final special. Buy one, bring everyone. Others photoshopped Wilson into a deserted arena with the words, "Energy? Never heard of her." Even ESPN's own SportsCenter account added to the narrative, posting a highlight reel from one of Clark's Fever playoff games the same night as Game 2 of the finals, an unsubtle reminder of who truly moved the needle. By the time Game 2 tipped off, the situation had gone from embarrassing to catastrophic. The league scrambled, giving away free tickets through local businesses, but even that couldn't fill the seats. The TV broadcast avoided wide shots altogether, sticking to tight camera angles that hid the empty upper decks. But fans on social media weren't fooled. Panoramic videos from the arena told the real story. One viral clip was captioned, "The Finals, sponsored by Crickets." Even players outside the feud began weighing in. Some called for unity, others quietly admitted what everyone could see: the finals simply lacked the spark that Caitlin Clark brought. It was a rare moment of collective honesty, and one that made Engelbert's job even harder. The commissioner tried to project calm, praising the team's resilience and leadership. But her words landed flat, echoing through an arena that felt just as deflated as the league's momentum. The half-empty stands told a story the league didn't want to hear. When Commissioner Kathy Engelbert stepped up for her pre-game press conference, the tension in the room was almost palpable. She opened with familiar lines about historic growth and competitive excellence, but the faces staring back at her said everything. The media wasn't buying it, and neither were the fans watching at home. The first question hit like a jab. "Commissioner, how do you explain record-low attendance and declining fan engagement during the finals?" Engelbert froze for a beat before forcing a thin, practiced smile. Her answer, citing scheduling conflicts and competition with football season, sounded hollow. The press corps wasn't having it. The follow-up came fast, sharp, and direct. "Isn't this really about how the league mishandled Caitlin Clark's rise and alienated her fan base?" That was the breaking point. Engelbert's expression hardened, her tone turned clipped, and the mask of calm professionalism began to crack. The room, once tense, now felt electric. Everyone could sense that the league's biggest problem wasn't just the empty seats behind her, but the uncomfortable truth she could no longer spin away. "This isn't about one player," Engelbert insisted. "We have incredible talent across the league." But the defensiveness in her voice said more than her words ever could. Within minutes, clips of the exchange were everywhere. The hashtag #FireEngelbert exploded across social media, turning the commissioner into the face of the WNBA's growing identity crisis. Fans had lost their patience. Instead of calming the storm, Engelbert's comments reignited it and pulled Aya Wilson and Dewana Bonner back into the crossfire. Her tone made it sound like she was protecting them rather than addressing the real issue, and suddenly they were taking the heat too. Even analysts who had previously defended Engelbert called her remarks tone-deaf. The gap between league leadership and its new, energized fan base had never looked wider. Inside the arena, the disconnect was impossible to hide. Cameras kept cutting away from the empty upper decks. Broadcasters stuck to close-up shots. The few fans who had shown up were subdued, their cheers swallowed by the cavernous silence. It didn't feel like a championship. It felt like a dress rehearsal for a show no one wanted to see. Engelbert's refusal to acknowledge Caitlin Clark's absence as a factor didn't project confidence. It came off as denial. By the next morning, the headlines were brutal. Engelbert melts down. Empty seats, empty words. WNBA in crisis. The speculation was over. The league's leadership had clearly lost control of the narrative. Behind closed doors, damage control kicked into overdrive. PR teams pumped out generic talking points, social media managers flooded feeds with highlight clips, and communication staffers tried to steer reporters away from the attendance disaster. But it was too late. Fans weren't fooled. Comment sections filled with side-by-side comparisons, packed fever games versus barren finals arenas, accompanied by captions that said it all. "You chased away your audience." One viral post summed up the mood perfectly. "Now you're playing for yourselves." Even younger players had started speaking out quietly about what was happening. Many were growing frustrated, tired of seeing veterans treat Caitlin Clark's success as a threat instead of a blessing. One rising star, speaking anonymously, put it bluntly, "Caitlin helped everyone. We all got paid more. We all got attention. Why are people mad about that?" That simple comment cut to the core of the issue. The divide wasn't just between fans and league management anymore. It was between the old guard and the new era. In a last-ditch effort to steady the ship, Commissioner Engelbert called an emergency meeting with representatives from both finals teams, urging them to focus on basketball, not narratives. But it was already too late. The story had spun far beyond her control. ESPN, Fox, and countless independent analysts on YouTube were all dissecting the disaster, calling it the biggest PR collapse in league history. Meanwhile, the numbers spoke for themselves. Ratings for Game 1 were barely half of what the Indiana Fever's semi-final games, the ones featuring Caitlin Clark, had drawn. No amount of spin could soften the blow. "Fans have spoken," one analyst said bluntly on national TV. "They care about stories, not slogans. And right now, the WNBA isn't telling a story anyone believes." Inside both locker rooms, the mood was grim. Headlines blared the same painful truth: lowest finals ratings in a decade. Players tried to focus on the game, but the numbers were impossible to ignore. Aya Wilson, who had spent her entire career championing the league and pushing for growth, reportedly broke down in private. "We did everything right on the court," she told a friend. "But it still feels like nobody cares." Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, scrambling to regain control, called another media briefing. Once again, she leaned on the same phrases about positive growth and expanding opportunities. But the press wasn't interested in corporate optimism anymore. The first question hit directly at the heart of the matter: why are people tuning out? Her response, "We're still in a great place," landed with a thud. It wasn't reassurance, it was denial. Because the truth was now unavoidable. Without Caitlin Clark, the finals were invisible. Every attempt to downplay that reality only made the league look more disconnected. Cameras showed smiling players during broadcasts, but the wide shots betrayed everything. Empty patches of seats, muted crowds, and an atmosphere that felt more like an exhibition than a championship. Game 1 won't be remembered for who lifted the trophy. It will be remembered for what it revealed. The WNBA's leadership had spent months trying to prove the league could thrive without Clark, only to discover she had been the gravitational center holding it all together. Once she was gone, the orbit collapsed. By the next morning, sports outlets were ruthless. One headline summed it up bluntly: "Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's pulse flatlined." Talk shows turned the finals into a case study in mismanagement, a league that finally had the world's attention, only to lose it by refusing to understand what and who had brought it there. The backlash was no longer contained, it was spreading fast. "This isn't a basketball problem," a Fox analyst said bluntly. "It's an ego problem." Fans agreed. They weren't angry at the athletes themselves. They were angry at the arrogance that had pushed their favorite rookie out of the spotlight. On Reddit and X, petitions calling for Kathy Engelbert's resignation gathered thousands of signatures overnight. "The league forgot who brought us here," one viral post read. "Now it's paying the price." Sponsors were paying attention, too. Executives from major brands reportedly reached out to the league, voicing concern about the optics. "We invested in momentum, not controversy," one sponsor representative said. Networks, meanwhile, began quietly re-evaluating future broadcast commitments, uncertain whether the finals could deliver anything close to the ratings Caitlin Clark had guaranteed all season. In a last-ditch effort to shift the narrative, the WNBA's marketing department floated ideas for a fan appreciation campaign. But by then, the damage was too deep. This wasn't a marketing issue, it was a credibility crisis. Fans no longer trusted league leadership. They felt alienated by veterans who had mocked the very player who brought them into the fold. What was supposed to be a celebration of women's basketball had devolved into a cautionary tale. Aya Wilson's frustration, DeWanna Bonner's disappointment, Engelbert's deflection, none of it existed in isolation. Together, they told a story of a league unraveling from within. Because the truth was simple. Fans hadn't